So here I am working on this Moxon Vise project, and honestly, it's taken me a while, more like 8+ months or so to finally work on it. This is where I started out. What I was doing was I was using my square and a marking knife, and I was marking out on a 2-inch piece of poplar. I decided for the back jaw to use the 2-inch piece of poplar because one, it's what I had on hand, and two, it was pretty stable and it's hard enough for the project that I'm going to be making. So, as you can see, I'm just using the marking knife to mark out my lines for the little corner cheeks where the clamps will hold it to the workbench. Now here, just decided to use hand saws to cut out that little notch. You'll see I'm cutting it out here, and then that little notch right there, that's going to be on both sides, and that's where you can actually clamp it to the workbench. Now, I also decided to round over the corners. As you saw when I was using the marking knife, I made these marks. I decided to use the jigsaw to round over the corners. And it's not just for looks, even though it does make it look better. It's also partially for safety. So that way, you're not bashing it when you're going to move it around and use it. And two, I have a tendency to grab things and stab myself, and there's all types of different corners in my shop, and I just figured I didn't need another set. So instead, I decided I'm just going to use the jigsaw, round it over, make it look good, and make it safer. The next thing here that I'm doing is I'm actually lining up the front maple jaws with the rear poplar jaw. And what I'm doing is I'm using a flush trimming bit with my router, and I'm taking just short little passes at a time. And what that's going to do is it's going to make the profile of the front vise match that of the rear. You don't have to do this. Honestly, a Moxon vise can be as fancy as you want it to be, or as down and basic as you want it to be. I decided to go just a little bit fancy, at least dress it up. You can see there that on the maple, there's a little burn mark from routing and the way it's set up right there. But I decided later when I was sanding, it was easy to get rid of. Nothing major. Here, I'm just drilling a 1-inch hole. You can use a normal drill press if you want. I'm using a portable one. It was just easier while the jaws were clamped together. Just drill straight on through them. And this is where the hardware for the Moxon vise will go. It's where the actual threaded screw piece will slide through. And then on top of that, what I decided to do to add some protection was add these brass bushings to each of the holes. Now, the outside diameter matches the 1-inch hole, and the inside diameter of the bushing actually matches the threaded screw. Just gives a little protection so that way that threaded screw doesn't go through and tear apart the wood over time. Now you can see I'm putting the threaded screw in here, and the one end I use thread locker and let it sit for a while so the nut locked into it, and then here I'm screwing on the nut for the other side that'll hold this threaded rod in. And you can chisel out where that nut is going to go on the inside, so that way it recesses into the wood. However, I decided just to use a really big wrench and just essentially embed that nut into the poplar. And yes, the poplar, while still being a hardwood, is soft enough with this force from that wrench to allow the nut to be inset. And what this does, an added advantage is with it compressing into the fibers of the wood and just the way that wood moves and natural moisture and all the above, it provides enough pressure that that screw isn't going to go anywhere. And this is what it looks like. Like I said, it's not beautiful, not pretty, but it does the job. Now for the front jaw of the vise, I just used my CNC, and you can see I put a little engraving in the front of it Just wanted to dress it up a little. You don't have to, but I did. And then I used some epoxy with some mica powder just to add some color, add a little accent to it. This is the front side of the vise that you're going to see when you're using it. So I figure why not just dress it up a little. Now here I'm using 80 grit sandpaper just to smooth it out, get an initial sanding down. Then I switched to 120 grit for a final sanding here. You don't got to go real smooth on this. And just sanded that front down. It was actually easier just to switch sanders because I had the sanding disc already installed. And then you don't have to do this. I decided to add a little Danish oil to it. Now, if you are going to add it to the front of the vise. You don't want to add it into the jaw of the vise. That's the working part of it on the inside, and you'll see that in a little bit. But I've added the Danish oil here, and you don't want to get oil onto the working side of the vise, especially if you're going to add a cork rubber to it like I will here in a little bit. But I did spill a little bit on there, and you'll see me sanding it off in a little bit. But the reason I added the oil, just I want to be grabbing at this and using it a lot, and bare wood will collect skin oils and dirt and everything like that. So I figured add a little protection, plus it makes it look a little bit better. Now you'll see here that brown spot in the middle right there. That's it. That's where the oil spilled onto it. I just let it dry. It was easier to let it dry up. And then again, back with the 120, just sand it down. Now I did sand the whole inside jaw of the vise here. And part of that was, one, to get rid of the oil, but two, just to kind of scuff it up a little bit. So that way, when I install the cork rubber, or crubber like everyone calls it, it has something to stick to. Now for mine, what I got was, it's an 1/8 inch thick crubber off of Amazon. You can buy it off Amazon or any of the woodworking hardware stores. And here I just line it up. The one that I bought was adhesive backed already, so it made it real easy. And you only apply it to one jaw of the vise. I'm applying it to my sliding jaw, which is on the front. And it's pretty easy. You just line it up, push it down, a little pressure, and there you have it. It's stuck. Now, what I did is I went out and trimmed it up to the shape of the jaw so that you can see that. And what I'm doing now is I have to cut out the holes of where that threaded rod from the back jaw is going to go through. Now, I'm using my awl to push through it. And as you can see, didn't think ahead. I pushed through and then I couldn't find the hole. So what I did was I just went, used my awl again, pushed through and left the awl in this time. And then I'm using just a utility knife that I have on hand with a sharp blade to cut it out. Essentially a couple straight lines in the center there, and then I cut to the shape of the circle. You can use an X-Acto knife or a craft knife. Just make sure it's a sharp knife. And you want to cut it so the hole is big enough so that threaded rod will fit through and it won't catch on any of the rubber or anything like that. This is what it looks like. And then you just attach it on. I have all the hardware installed. And here it is. On my workbench that I have in the shop, I am using some quick clamps just to hold it for demonstration. I don't prefer quick clamps. I think something more of either a small parallel clamp or a C-clamp would probably be better just for holding power. That way it doesn't rock or move. But for the general setup and design, here it is. Hope you enjoyed it.